Hello, I'm John Molesky, and this is Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. We have a very special guest joining us today. She is Kira Rudik. Kira is a member of the Parliament of Ukraine, where she serves as first deputy chairwoman of the Committee on Digital Transformation. Before entering politics, Ms. Rudik was an IT entrepreneur, and in a recent ranking, she was recognized as one of the top 100 most influential women in Ukraine. She joins us from Kiev. Kira Rudik, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me.
So let me start with what will be an obvious question, which is just for you to give us an update on the current state of affairs in the capital city. We've all seen the reports that Russia has upped its attacks on Kiev in the past week. How are you doing? How's the city doing?
Well, the situation is tough. I urge you to imagine that almost every night around 1 a.m. you hear this terrifying sound, the sound of the air raid siren, which means a couple of things. First, you need to wake up your family and go to a safe place. It means second thing, that you should take it really seriously, because we have seen people killed by the recent attacks because of the fires caused or the fractures of the missiles hitting people. And the third thing that it means is that you cannot feel safe anywhere, even if to your own bed. And one of the things that I keep thinking of is that every time we go to bed in the evening, we do not know if we are going to wake up. And this is always terrifying. My family and I spend evenings and nights under the stairs in our home, where, usually people store the old shoe boxes. Well, this is where we have the backpacks. And I cannot believe I'm saying it in the 21st century, but we have backpacks for the nuclear attack. And many Ukrainians do, because it's very serious, and Russia keeps threatening us with the nuclear explosions. And so you have to be ready. And if there is something that we learned over the 16 months since the full-scale invasion started, is you have to be ready for anything. No matter what the world tells you, you have to make sure that you keep yourself and your family safe, or that you have done all the precautions.
I'm sure that no one could begin to imagine what that's like unless they actually experienced it. And anything I would say would be so trivial in comparison to what you're going through. So all I would offer is, I'm so sorry that you and your family and that your fellow countrymen and women have to endure this. But we have all around the world been amazed and inspired by the apparent resolve of the Ukrainian people. How are people holding up in that regard? Do you see any slippage, or is it happening in the opposite way? Is resolve growing?
So continuing on my story, in the morning, you wake up, you look how much sleep you have gotten, and then you start texting each other with the people who you're supposed to have meetings with, saying, okay, let's push it through. And everybody knows and understands why is that, because people are trying to put their kids to bed, and they were like, didn't have any sleep at all, etc. And this is our new reality. Of course, the war is exhausting. Of course, the constant life like this is terrifying. Of course, the emotional toll that's being taken, it's just unbelievable. But recently, we had a very good check on where we are in terms of morale. And the check was another terrifying event, the terrorist attack on Novokakhovska Dam, where in one moment, thousands of people have lost their homes, and the huge ecological catastrophe happened to our country. It happened early in the morning. And you know what? During the day, thousands of Ukrainians, exhausted Ukrainians, tired Ukrainians, terrified Ukrainians, went down to the Kakhovska region to offer their help to the refugees, to become rescue workers, to help to fight for every life, a human life, animal life, and just make sure that we are all standing together. When I'm saying this, my eyes, they get just wet, because this is such an amazing realization that we still have it in us. We still have it, and we know that this resolve and this understanding will push us through towards the end of the war, towards the victory of the war, no matter when it happens, we know that the 16 months did not wind us down. It made us stronger.
None of us know how we'll react to such a circumstances till we're in it. Have you surprised yourself by the level of strength that you found within?
You know, on the day 3 of the full-scale invasion, we still had Russians surrounding Kiev, and we were getting ready for a siege. And many people didn't know where their family were, and it was just the complete mess, like the way that you imagine apocalypse happening, right? Apocalypse. And so we went to the church because, you know, at war there are no atheists. So we went there, and the priest said something very important. He said, "Dear God, please, at this time of crisis, let me be the best version of myself. Let me be the person that I always hoped I would be at this moment." So this is what we all hope, that at a time like this, you would be the best of what you can be.
Well, thank you for sharing such personal insights. I want to ask you about on the technical side, how is the country doing in maintaining essential services to people, whether that be electricity, air conditioning, internet access, as we're using today? How is that holding up?
Oh, so there are different angles of that. So the first one is that people are really coming together, and our emergency services honestly have been incredible, and they have performed so many things that nobody is counting as to be heroic, but they have been heroic. Like if you remember the last winter, when the attacks of our critical infrastructure were almost daily, and we lost more than 50% of our energy infrastructure, they were fixing things like same day, something that we never could have wished during the peaceful times, something that nobody believed that could happen, making things that our allies were saying like, "Oh no, you're kidding me, it is impossible to do that." And they were like doing those doohickey things to get away with without their spare details, without any like real heavy support. Second way is that when there are no attacks, people are doing well. Like we go to work every single day. So we have internet connections, though the Starlink support has been incredible because it helped us with the downsides. We have water supplies. However, I can tell you, as a person who survived the siege, the potential siege of Kiev, we still have water and food stored at home at very weird places. One of the greatest fears that I had was that, you know, we will die of starvation or of thirst, like people in Mariupol were dying, and this is why we put supplies everywhere. So, and I know many Ukrainian families did as well. So we can survive tough times if they're coming this winter. So the things on the process level have been tough, but they have also been manageable. And there has been many things that were fixed just because people who were doing them really cared, and they felt like they are executing on their duty to the country and to their nation the way that people who are at the front are executing on their duty. And I think this is what got us through basically having almost all luxuries of the modern life, having them in place.
And is Parliament continuing to function?
Yes, this is one of the huge prides that we take, that we are functioning since the day one of the full-scale invasion, and up to this point we are gathering in the chambers not less than once in 2 weeks. We are working on different particular directions, starting from first acting as a service to our military, and this is our key goal. But second is making sure that our economy continues to operate, to interacting with our international partners and allies, and so many other items that you would never imagine that you would have to do being a parliamentarian. And there has been so many different things. Like there is no university in the world that would teach you how to be a parliamentarian at the time of war, right? So then you do same thing that all your all your fellow citizens do. You do the best that you can. And so this is what we have done. And one of the things that we are super proud of is that last year, the first good thing that happened was when we got the candidacy to European Union. It was an amazing breakthrough, and it was super uplifting and motivating. And we got the list of 7 items to support our candidacy and to move forward with the process. So we, as a parliament that gathers always in secrecy, were able to fulfill all the and vote for all the necessary bills on those 7 items till the end of the year, showing the productivity like as never before and like nobody before. And, you know, we understand that for reforms to happen, it's not enough to pass the bill, even if it's perfect. But it is important that we do the step that, you know, we push it from our side and making sure that it's already there, living and being like having some improvements, and that our allies actually recognize that, saying, yes, we see that that you're doing well. And so this year we had the Ukraine EU summit, and the first time when we were coming there, as you know, those school kids that had their all homework done, we were coming there with a satisfying feeling. And we hope that Ukrainians also feel that that one of the reasons why we are still here is that our brave men and women are fighting at the front, but also the government is working, operating, confirming that we are democratic country fighting for democratic values, and our institutions are working.
About that, I want to ask you specifically about leadership, right? You've seen the praise that President Zelensky has received from people and leaders around the world, the leadership that you and your colleagues in parliament are exhibiting. And as the priest said about challenging people to be the best version of themselves, the leadership has been at all levels of the society. Was this a surprise to you, this level of unity from Ukraine, that prior to the war, there were differences, as there are in any country? Certainly we know about those in the United States. We're a very divided country politically now. But what about the leadership and the unity that you've seen? If you could comment on that.
So I have to comment on the day one of the full-scale invasion. And this is my favorite story. So the bombarding of Kiev started at 5 a.m. And we woke up and started calling each other as parliamentary party leaders, trying to see if we can get people in. According to Ukrainian constitution, the martial law needs to be announced in the chambers, not anywhere else, and by the majority of Ukrainian parliamentarians. So at first we received absolute no from our security, and it was a mess in Kiev because nobody knew what to do. But this is the main obligation of the parliament, to announce martial law and also to prove to the whole world that the democracy in Ukraine works and that we are still here. So we said, okay, we will get as many people as possible, and then we will see what happens. And so I remember when we finally got the clearance from our security, they said we will have 10 minutes in the chambers. And so we were starting to get in. And the windows were covered with the bags of sand. It was really dark and very emotional. And then when we got to the chambers, we have seen that of 420 members of parliament, almost 300 came. And for the 10 minutes that we were desperately clicking our buttons, calling for the world to help us, to save us, and announcing martial law, we were holding hands and singing national anthem. It was one of the most emotional moments in my life. And also we made a vow at that moment that no matter how long it takes and no matter how painful it would be, we will stand united and put our political differences aside, because we have a bigger thing to fight for, a common goal. And right now, 16 months in, I can tell you one thing. Oh, it has been incredibly painful. Politicians are not set up to work together really, really well. But there are things that can really push you towards one goal. And there is another thing you asked about President Zelensky, and it's not a surprise that before the full-scale invasion started, we were an oppositional party, and I was an oppositional party leader. However, I think the story of President Zelensky stepping up and the story of Ukraine surprising everybody was generally a common story of the fact that you yourself are more capable of what the world expects from you, and also you are more capable than you expect of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story as well. Amazing what you describe. I want to ask you about recent headlines, one of which is Russia's decision to renege on the grain deal, and what the impact of that will be on Ukraine.
So first of all, the Russians' decision on pull back on the grain deal is not a surprise for us. And it's actually a very, very good example on that we currently do not have any solution, any answer to the particular question. If the international laws do not work, who or what are the powers that can make Russia keep their part of the deal? And let's look at it even larger and even wider. Who or what are the powers that could keep any authoritarian regime to keep their part of the deal? You know, we used to live in a world where we thought that these agreements, they work, and we felt really safe. Since the war started, and it started in 2014, when Russia attacked us first, we realized that things do not work, but there were still like illusions that things can be fixable. Right now, for everyone who is talking about any negotiation or any peaceful deal, I'm asking the question, how are you going to ensure that Russia does not pull off it, that Russia would keep their part of the bargain? And you know what? There is not a good answer to that. Even 16 months into the full-scale invasion, there is not a good answer. So back to the grain deal. In Ukraine, we are right now in a much better situation than a year ago when this deal was put together. What bothers me most is that there are so many countries, including African countries, Asian countries, that rely on the grain that we are supposed to export. And it's not only Ukraine that Putin is punishing right now. It is actually, he's terrorizing and using hunger as a weapon through so many people. And many of them do not even care what's happening in Ukraine, but they would feel this pressure. And the issue is that it would not fix over time. Even if the war is over today, it would take like a long amount of time for Ukraine to get back to the agricultural leader as we used to be before the last year. So before the full-scale invasion, we used to be world's top 5 producers of grain, sunflower oil, tomatoes, buckwheat and corn. Which ones of those you don't like, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, 30% of our territories are mined. They are landmines. So can you imagine how much time would we need to even demine that? And of course, everything that we produce right now are blocked at the ports, and we are trying to find different solutions, like using the river transport, using the ground transport. Of course, it drags up the price, and of course, it would have an impact on so many people throughout the world. This is another lesson that we learned, that we are all much closer to each other than we used to think.
Another recent headline, of course, was the meeting of NATO leaders last week. Talk to us about, are you happy with the level of support you're receiving from NATO in the West? And what are the immediate needs that Ukraine has that you're hoping your allies and supporters will step up and provide?
Well, so first of all, and I cannot say it enough, we would not be able to fight and be at the point where we are if it was not for support of our allies. And we are very clear about that. So they are basically two key points for us being where we are. The first is the bravery of our army and our men and women, and the second, the weapons and support from our allies. So, of course, we need more. We are in this David versus Goliath situation where we have to have more weapons. Because Russia produces them every day and in huge quantities. We have to be smarter and more modern. We cannot use the same strategy as Russia, using people as a battlefield meat. So we have to train our soldiers and make sure that we are as effective and efficient with the weapons that we've got as possible. And if you look at it, you can say that we are. But it is still not enough, because we still did not get back all our territories and did not regain our sovereignty and did not free our people. The immediate need, of course, is the supplies and the ammunition, because we are using them in very high tempos. And the thing that we used to beg for since the day one, the fighter jets, so we can add this additional layer of protection over the peaceful cities and to create this life-changing, history-changing switch of powers at the battlefield. As of right now, we are not getting the fighter jets. However, and this is a fantastic example of why we are okay with this NATO summit, is, we learned over the 16 months one thing: to hear the word no to everything so many times. No to heavy weapons, no to tanks, no to Patriot missiles, no to some sophisticated wide-range missiles. And we learned to push through that. We learned to work with that. We learned to hear it as like just another stepping stone, saying, okay, well, we need to work harder. We need to pressure harder. We need to persuade better. And so right now, when we hear from NATO that they are not getting us the invitation in yet, we're saying, okay. And at the same time, we hear, oh, you remember those fighter jets that we told you we will never give you? Yeah, well, maybe we will start training your pilots on that. Not promising anything, but your pilots will already be trained. And so we have the high hopes that maybe end of the year or beginning of next year, we'll get the fighter jets. Because you know what? We learned to push through the nose. So of course it is painful, and Ukrainian people are waiting. There are two things that are written in our constitution: that we have the direction to become members of EU, and we have a direction to become members of NATO. And this is not something that I'm telling you as a politician or a citizen. This is something that Ukrainian people decided. It's their wish, and we are executing on this wish. So if you look back in 2014, why the war started, it was because we made this decision. So we are basically trying right now just to fight for the same thing over and over again. And one last remark about NATO. I want all of us to look back into history and remember why NATO was created. And it was created because the allies decided that they need to work together to defend themselves against the aggression of Soviet Union, and that they need to arm themselves and get ready. So right now, what we are doing in Ukraine, we are actually doing what the NATO was supposed to do. We are executing on the goal. And this is why, even by this one particular reason, we have to be members of NATO. And, and there are many other reasons, like at the end of the war, we would have the strongest and the largest army in the whole Europe, and we'll have to figure out the way of how to interact together. But again, we do not see it as a goal that we did not achieve. We see it as the goal that is in front of us. We just need to push further to get there.
Let me ask you about the progress of the counteroffensive. And you just mentioned the landmines and the problems that poses. And that's what we're hearing, is that slowing down Ukrainian troops. What can you tell us about the status of the counteroffensive?
Well, of course, the minefields, they are being the key factor in slowing down our troops. Again, because our strategy is and always was that we cannot use people as battlefield meat. Cannot. Second point, why it is very hard to talk about counteroffensive is because it's an incredibly emotional matter. There was a recent research that said that every Ukrainian had or either lost somebody or knows somebody fighting at the front. And I believe it is true because we are all so connected to each other, and it has been such a massive volunteer effort from people to go and fight for their country. So that when we are talking about counteroffensive, it's not just like, counteroffensive. It means that somebody that you love so much and that you pray every day for will have to get out of the trench and march forward towards the minefield, towards the enemy. And then the one thing that you can only pray that our military commanders are doing the best, and we see that they're brilliant, and even Russia confirmed that they are brilliant, that they would do the best of the minimizing the losses, because it is so personal. The counteroffensive have faces and hearts, and this is why, we remember how it was last year. There was less attention to that. This is why there was probably less pressure when it was very calm during the summer, and then the wow effect happened in autumn. Well, we do not know what's going to happen this year. We can only do our part, and our part is to get to our military anything that they need, to go to our allies for more weapons, for supplies, to help train the drone operators, get the drones, to make sure that from the medical perspective, they're getting everything that they need. Because while we are talking right now, there are people who are moving through the minefield, and we can just hope that the Bradleys or whatever other ammunition that they've got will do their job as well, saving them.
In preparing to speak with you today, PM Rudik, or MP Rudik, I was reading your Twitter feed, and I saw a recent tweet of yours where you were referencing the question of a young girl who asked you, would there be fewer wars if women ruled the world? And you mentioned that this really struck a chord with you. Could you talk to us about that?
Oh, well, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is female leadership. And as being a woman myself, I've gone through all the struggles, and all the issues of being a woman leader. And I made it my goal to make sure that for the next generations, it would be much easier to achieve their dreams, that our daughters would have same possibilities and opportunities as our sons, and that, as Vice President Kamala Harris said, that we are all women are standing on shoulders of the women who were before us. And, I'm adding to that we should work to be a really strong shoulder for the next generation. And this is why I'm saying that better representation of women in parliaments, in governments, is adding you a different view, is giving you a different angle, and probably, hopefully, at some point would show that there are different solutions to the same problems. And this is why I answered her that, honestly, I do not know if there would be less wars if women would be leaders, but I'm ready to work as hard as possible to try, so we can live long enough to see that and see the proof of that. So that's the goal.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, and you've been very generous with your time. But before we close, I wanted to ask you, is there anything you'd like us to know that we haven't had a chance to discuss up to this point?
There is one particular thing that I think we also represent, and it is the fact that impossible is absolutely nothing. If you truly believe in it, and if you're ready to work for it, and if you're ready to push as hard as it is necessary. I hope that next time when we speak with you, we'll have boring problems to solve, like building the bridges or changing the institutions to work better. But right now we have a most important goal, to give back to our nation, to our motherland, to fight for its freedom, for things that we believe at. And I'm absolutely sure today, on 16 months since the full-scale invasion started, same way as on the day one, we will win the war. Watch us.
Well, my most sincere hope is that you and I can speak again soon about post-war Ukraine and all the challenges you'll have ahead, and that this nightmare will be over sooner rather than later. Kira Rudik, thank you very much for your ongoing leadership in Ukraine and for spending some time with us and helping us understand things a little better today.
Thank you so much, and glory to Ukraine.
I also want to thank Christina Smachalo, who for helping make today possible, and Sarah Barnes, our own Sarah Barnes here at the Wilson Center. We wouldn't have had this conversation without them. So our sincere thanks to them as well. And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed this edition of Wilson Center Now, and that you'll join us again soon. Until then, for all of us at the center, I'm John Molesky. Thank you for your time and interest.